This video will help Final Cut Pro 7 editors make the transition to DaVinci Resolve. The Resolve Edit page works just like Final Cut Pro, and you can easily customize the interface to show the features you need when you need them. You can even click here to switch between single viewer mode and dual viewer mode. While you may spend most of your time in the Edit page, it's important to know that DaVinci Resolve has 5 dedicated interface pages for specific tasks. Just click the buttons at the bottom of the screen to go to the corresponding page. The Media page is where you import and organize your footage. You'll edit and refine your project in the Edit page. When it's time for color correction and grading, just go to the Color page. The Fairlight page is a fully functioning digital audio workstation for recording, enhancing, and mixing your tracks. And finally, there's the Deliver page for rendering and exporting your project. Let's take a closer look. When you open Resolve, the first thing you see is the Project Manager, which is where you can create a new project, import a project, or open a previous project. Here in the Project Manager, you can sort projects by name or format, search for projects, and even organize your projects into folders. Double-click to launch a project. Project settings are available under the File menu or by clicking the gear button at the bottom right corner of the screen. Here you'll find Master Project settings, image scaling and color management, as well as capture and playback and general options. Most of what you need is in the Master Settings panel. Here, Resolve can generate proxy media called Optimized Media for better playback performance, and like Final Cut Pro, supports ProRes. Proxy management is automatic. You'll find System and User Preferences in the DaVinci Resolve menu. Here you can set up external hardware, storage and plugins for your system, or click the User button to set user-specific preferences like autosave, editing, and keyboard mapping. Resolve keyboard shortcuts are searchable, and you can quickly map them to work like other editing systems. However, you won't find a specific Final Cut Pro 7 keyboard layout because most of Resolve's tools already use the same keyboard shortcuts. J, K, and L for playback and dynamic trimming, N for snapping, Shift Z to zoom to fit, B for blade, M for markers, F9, F10, and F11 keys, and many other common shortcuts are identical to Final Cut Pro 7. New Resolve projects open to the Edit page, and as you can see, the default layout is very similar to Final Cut Pro 7. In the upper left, you've got the Media Pool browser and Master Bin list, where you can find and organize footage and bins, just like the classic Final Cut Pro browser window. Bins can be viewed in list view or in icon view. They can also be nested within each other for organizing large projects. This works exactly the same as Final Cut Pro. You can also open bins into their own windows. Click here to show or hide the master bin list, and here to expand either the timeline or the Media Pool browser. At the bottom of the master bin list, you can create power bins and smart bins. Power bins can be seen across all projects. Simply choose Show Power Bins under the View menu. Smart bins are a real time saver for organizing your projects because they automatically populate using metadata. In this example, we'll create a smart bin called Lifestyle. Generate a rule to populate that bin with any clips that have the keyword Lifestyle. Any new clips with the same metadata are automatically added to the smart bin. To import media, you simply right-click in the Media Pool or drag and drop from the Finder. You'll find even more tools for importing and organizing footage on the Media page, which shows a list of connected drives at the top of the screen and all of the media in your project at the bottom of the screen. To bring footage into a project, Simply drag it from the top down to the bottom of the screen and drop it into the media pool. You can even import entire bin structures by dragging a folder to the master bin list. You'll feel right at home in the edit page where you can simply double-click or drag a clip from the media pool browser into the source viewer to preview and mark your clips. And you can use I and O to set your in and out points just like Final Cut Pro. Then, drag from the source viewer to the timeline viewer where you'll see the familiar editing overlays. You can also drag clips directly to the timeline. If you take a closer look at the editing overlays, you'll see some options that go above and beyond Final Cut Pro 7. Like Ripple Overwrite, which lets you overwrite a clip of a specific length with another clip that's of a different length. The new clip takes the place of the original and the difference in length is rippled. Another unique editing command is Append to End, which edits a clip or multiple clips to the end of a sequence no matter where the playhead is or what's marked. The Resolve timeline works like the Final Cut Pro 7 timeline. Timeline clips can be selected and moved around in the default edit mode, which uses the keyboard shortcut A, same as Final Cut Pro. You can extend or shorten clips in this mode, as well as move them around. But for serious trimming, you press the T key or click the trim button to go into trim mode, which is similar to Final Cut Pro's R, RR, S, and SS shortcuts. T and A switch you back and forth in Resolve between the trim and normal edit modes. DaVinci Resolve includes virtually every imaginable editing and trimming tool available, including some that you're accustomed to in Final Cut Pro 7. For example, in trim mode, the type of edit you do is contextual and is based on where you click. As you can see, the cursor changes accordingly. Ripple trims only the in or out point of an edit, while Roll moves both sides of the edit point. Option Click lets you choose only video or audio tracks for trimming. Select the clip itself to slip or slide. Slip trim is at the top of the clip and slide is at the bottom. And just like Final Cut Pro, to toggle snapping on and off, press N, or click the button that looks like a magnet. Notice that Resolve includes handy white outlines showing your entire clip handles while trimming. Additional trim features can be accessed in the trim menu, and you can easily keyboard map your favorites. Audio waveforms make trimming and refining your cut even easier, and the Resolve Edit page provides waveforms in both the timeline and the source viewer. You can use the timeline view options to display waveforms in the timeline and resize your tracks. In the source viewer, use the viewer mode pop-up to see the waveform by itself, or use the options menu in the upper right corner of the viewer to display waveforms simultaneously with the source video as either zoomed or full clip audio waveforms. This incredibly useful feature is unique to Resolve and makes it easier than ever to mark your clips based on audio because you can see exactly where sentences start and end.
It was really important to go out and shoot the real world.
Here are a few additional timeline editing features that work the same as Final Cut Pro 7. To delete a clip and leave the gap, or lift delete, just select the clip and press the delete key. You can select and delete the gap just like a clip. To ripple delete, select a clip and press Shift Delete or the forward delete key on an extended keyboard. Use the Shift and Command keys together to move a clip within the timeline, just like Final Cut's Swap Edit. You can right-click any edit point and choose the standard default transition from the contextual menu, or simply select the edit point and press Command-T. To apply a transition to multiple edit points, go to Trim Mode, then drag across the edit points. If an edit point is red, there isn't enough handles to make the transition. Just drag the top of the clip to slip the footage, select the edit points, and press Command-T. You can make any transition the default in the effects library. You'll have no trouble creating awesome-looking effects, since they're very similar to Final Cut Pro 7. You can stack video clips in the timeline for compositing effects, and you'll find transitions, filters, and other effects in the effects library. The effects library includes built-in resolve effects, filters, and transitions, and also open effects from third-party vendors like Boris and Sapphire. You can search for an effect to filter the options, and you can simply drag effects to a clip. Once you've applied an effect, you can modify it right in the timeline viewer, just like Final Cut Pro. For precision control of your parameters, you go to the inspector. Here you'll have access to composite modes, transform controls, cropping, retiming, scaling, and even lens correction to fix things like GoPro fisheye lens distortion. The inspector is similar to the filters and motion tabs of Final Cut Pro 7. Any effect that is keyframe controllable has these diamond-shaped keyframes that correspond with the keyframes in the timeline. The secret to keyframing parameters in Resolve is to first move the playhead to the frame you want in the timeline. Add a keyframe, change the parameter, move to a new location, and do the same thing. You can keyframe as many parameters as you like. In the timeline, you can click the keyframe icon to show keyframes only. This is great for sliding keyframes in time without changing their values. And there's a curve icon which opens the curve editor, where you have full Bezier control of curves and keyframes in audio, video, clip speed, and even transitions. Option-click to add a keyframe to the curve. This is similar to the Clip Keyframes button in the Final Cut Pro 7 timeline. You can also set and manipulate keyframes right in the timeline viewer, just like Final Cut Pro 7. In this example, we'll create a simple animation for this lower third. Click the Overlays button on the timeline viewer to show the overlays. For this example, let's also use Single Viewer mode. In the inspector, you'll see text and video controls. Select the video controls to manipulate the position of the title on screen. Move the playhead to the resting position of the title and set a position keyframe. Once you've set an initial keyframe, any changes to that parameter in the viewer automatically update as parameter keyframes in the inspector. Move the playhead to the starting position, then move the text. And finally, drag the fade handles on the clip to automatically keyframe the opacity. For easy speed changes, right-click a timeline clip and select Change Speed. Or you can use the retime controls to make variable speed changes like Final Cut's time remapping right in the timeline. Click the menu to add a speed point. Then use the menu to change speed between points. You can drag the speed points independently, and you can use the retime controls curve editor to refine your timing. For titles, simply drag a title effect from the effects library onto a video track. Placing it on the video track above a video clip automatically keys it. Once the effect is in the timeline, you can trim the head or tail in either direction, adjust the position in the viewer, or with the other title controls in the inspector. To fade your titles in and out, you could keyframe opacity or just drag the fade handles available on every clip. If you've ever worked with multicam editing in Final Cut Pro 7, you'll find the Resolve workflow nearly identical. Start by selecting all the clips you wish to include in your multicam edit. Right-click on one of them and choose New Multicam Clip using selected clips. This is like Final Cut's Make Multiclip sequence. You can assign how to sync the angles using the Angle Sync option. You can sync the same ways that you could in Final Cut 7, or you can sync by sound, which uses the audio waveforms. This method is extremely fast. To edit multicam, drag the multicam clip to the timeline and change the source viewer to multicam mode. Now you can play the multicam clip in the timeline and see the multicam angles in the source viewer. Use this pop-up to change the number of angles you can see in the viewer. Since the beginning of the multi-clip only has 4 angles, let's change back to the 2x2 layout. Each time you click an angle, it creates an edit to that angle in the timeline. Or use the numeric buttons to switch angles. To color grade, just go to the color page. Here you'll find DaVinci Resolve's professional color grading and effects interface. The tools are far too deep for this introductory video, but I'll show you a few concepts. There's a viewer to see whichever frame you're working on, and to the right of the viewer is the node tree. Think of it as a flowchart. The footage comes from the camera file on the left, goes through this node, which is simply a correction, then goes out to the right where it's rendered. Additional nodes can be added to create complex grades. The timeline in the middle of the page is the same timeline as the edit page. In fact, the seamless transition from edit to color or Fairlight audio and back is unique to Resolve. At the bottom are the color grading tools themselves. Final Cut Pro editors will recognize the color wheels. They're the same as in Final Cut Pro, but with one extra wheel called Offset, which is kind of like a master wheel. Under each color wheel, you'll find controls for things like contrast control, saturation, and hue. For quick grading, Resolve includes handy auto color and white balance controls in the bottom left corner of the color wheels panel. In the center of the controls area, you'll find additional tools. Curves uses graph-based control similar to Photoshop. And the qualifier tool is for selecting specific color ranges to pull masks for color corrections. This is like Final Cut Pro's limit effect option in the color corrector. Other powerful tools include a window tool for creating masks, a 3D tracker for tracking objects and stabilizing a shot. There's a keyer that you can invert and use with a qualifier. There's a blur tool with separate controls for the radius, horizontal, and vertical ratio. There's sizing controls that can also reframe and rotate. And there are even stereoscopic tools. To reset a node, just right-click on the node and choose Reset Grade. Since every page in Resolve is customizable, it's a good idea to hide the features we don't need. That way, we can focus on what's important. In this case, the viewer, node tree, and open effects panel. For this example, we'll use the new face refinement filter that comes with Resolve Studio. Start by dragging the filter to the primary node. Then click the Analyze button. This one filter alone can achieve in minutes what would normally be hours of tracking, mattes, blurs, and corrections. Resolve automatically recognizes and tracks the facial features on every frame. Once finished, you can choose which facial features you want to enhance or refine. Press Shift-F for a larger viewer and controls area. Let's hide the overlay. Now we can sharpen and brighten the eyes. Not too bright. And while we're at it, we can even soften those under-eye bags just a little. Let's check another frame. Looks great. Click this switch to turn an effect on and off. Now let's see it in the edit page. It looks easy because the heavy lifting is all done under the hood. Just keep in mind that the color page is fully loaded with DaVinci Resolve's Emmy Award-winning image processing. DaVinci Resolve was originally designed for Hollywood's elite colorists and has been used on more feature films and TV shows than anything else because it lets you create images that are simply impossible with other tools. The color page viewer offers a variety of modes for grading and comparing images. For this example, let's use split screen mode and set it to selected clips. Now we can compare 3 different versions of this airplane shot. The original, the graded image, and the third has a secondary grad filter look. This was created using a gradient power window and a key. Just click here to turn on the gradient. Then change the viewer mode to show the power window's overlay. Then you can adjust the gradient right in the viewer or with the controls. Then go to the key controls to invert the key or try other variations. If you look closely, you can see the different effects stages in the node tree. The gallery is for saving stills of your grade that can easily be applied to other shots in the timeline. This is similar to Final Cut's filter packs. Resolve includes an awesome set of gallery presets. Just click here to view them. And drag your favorites to the bottom of the window or directly to the gallery. When it's time to work on audio, you can start in the Edit page, where you can change a clip's volume level right in the timeline. Option-click to add audio keyframes, just like Final Cut Pro. Fade handles at the head and tail of every audio clip make it easy to create seamless audio transitions. The Mixer button at the top of the page shows the Edit page mixer, where you can adjust the volume level and pan controls for each track. Or click the Mixer Options menu to show just the audio meters for your main output. Now that you've seen the familiar audio features that you expect in an editing system, let's click over to the Fairlight page. Fairlight Audio was originally designed specifically for film and television post-production and is known worldwide for its incredible sound processing and quality. The Fairlight page includes all of the high-end features audio editors and engineers need right inside of DaVinci Resolve. It's optimized for multi-channel recording, audio editing, mixing, and sweetening. You no longer have to send a sequence out to another application. Pro Audio is simply a click away from editing. Let's take a quick look at the Fairlight page interface. The Meters button lets you monitor all of your project's audio and includes a composite of your video tracks from the Edit page, so there's no need to create a reference video. The viewer can easily be undocked, resized, or output to an external monitor. Right-click to change the timeline display to subframes or even samples. The ruler under the playhead changes accordingly. You can use the handy sliders to zoom all the way to the sample level for precision editing. The Fairlight page also includes multi-track recording and easy-to-use automation controls for recording level changes and other parameters over time. If you take a closer look at the mixer, you'll see that there's a 6-band parametric equalizer, 3D panning controls, and independent dynamics processing on every track. You can even add your favorite VST audio plugins from the effects library. If you're working with a lot of tracks, you can create submixes for your dialogue, effects, and music to simplify your mix. Just go to the Fairlight menu to open the bus format window, create your buses, and select the format. You can also create separate main outputs for different versions of your project. Then, open the Bus Assign window and assign your tracks. Now, there's a single control for each submix for the dialogue, effects, and music tracks. Submix buses and mains appear on the right side of the mixer and in the meters at the top of the page. There's also a full set of loudness meters to ensure your final output meets your delivery standards. Working in the Fairlight page is like having Pro Tools built right in. Now let's go back to the Edit page. If you're making dailies or creating review copies of your timeline, you can easily add a data window burn. Just go to the Workspace menu and choose Data Burn-In. Then select the metadata information you want to show, and it'll be written into the files you render in the Deliver page, as well as appear in your timeline viewer and external video display. This is like the timecode generator filter in Final Cut 7, but has more controls and metadata display options. The last page is the Deliver page, which is used for all rendering and exporting. Here you'll find a toolbar across the top, a timeline and viewer, render settings on the left, and a render queue on the right. This is pretty standard stuff, and there's publication presets for YouTube and Vimeo, and more. As you can see, DaVinci Resolve's flexible interface will be familiar enough to get you started no matter what system you're coming from, including Final Cut Pro 7. However, Resolve lets you go much further with the power to accommodate every workflow, from EDLs, XMLs, color decision lists, and key codes to raw image handling, and allows professionals to edit, color grade, mix, and master projects at the highest possible quality, all in one award-winning application. You can import your Final Cut Pro 7 XML files as well as traditional EDLs and AAFs through the File menu, relink your media, and finish your project right in Resolve. Now that you've seen how easy it is to switch to DaVinci Resolve, we hope that you'll take the time to learn more.